Hey guys, Arayvenn here. I was gauging interest for Starcraft on my channel, and while there was some interest for it, I realized that a lot of people have never actually played this game before or seen it, so I can see why you could be confused. So for that reason, I'm going to make this tutorial. If you do understand Starcraft, don't watch this. It will probably annoy the hell out of you. It's going to be very basic, but it's just so, the total noobs or beginners can understand what's going on. Alright, so there are three races in StarCraft 2, and the first one that we're going to cover is Terran. I'm going to do this by race just because I figured it would be a lot easier. The first thing we're going to cover with each race is the Gatherer. The Terran Gatherer is the SCV. Let's go ahead and take a look at him. Right, so this right here is the SCV. He is responsible for building everything and collecting all of the resources. The first thing we're going to look at is the gathering of resources. So the first thing anybody does at the start of the game is take their gatherers and put them onto the minerals. You'll see now that the gatherers are collecting the minerals and bringing them back to the command center in this case. So you'll see the blue icon in the top right of the screen. It's rising. That shows how many minerals I have. Minerals are used to build pretty much anything. The icon beside it is green. That's the Vespian gas icon. Vespian gas is needed a little bit later to tech to more powerful units or build later buildings. The way you collect Vespian is you build a refinery for Terran on those rocks that are spewing that gray mist, and then you can start collecting Vespian from there. The next thing we're going to look at is how Terran build things. What you're going to want to do is select your SCV, tell him what you want to build, and he'll head over there and start building it. The SCV must remain there until the building is done. That means that you're losing a lot of mining time while he's gone, and he's also vulnerable to attack while this is happening. If he is killed while he is building, the building will cease construction and just remain there until you can get another SCV on there. SCVs also have a repair ability, where they can heal fellow SCVs, buildings, and mechanical units. The next thing I want to talk about is supply. You'll notice two numbers in the top right. The one on the right is my total supply, and the one on the left is how much supply my units have taken up. Now, eventually, you'll hit the max, and you'll want to build supply depots to increase the maximum. It caps at 200. Supply depots are unique because they can lower and raise, which makes it a pretty good wall material. It's not rare that you'll see a wall like this, which defends early units from melee units. These are the Terran production facilities. You'll notice I built two of each, and that's because Terran production facilities have add-ons. The first one is a tech lab, which allows you to get the later, higher tier units of that facility, and the other one is a reactor, which allows you to make two of an early tier unit from that facility. So the first facility is barracks. They allow you to make biological units, the Marine, Marauder, Reaper, and Ghost. The reactor allows you to make two Marines. Everything else requires a tech lab. The next production facility is the factory, which is for mechanical units. Reactors allow you to make two Hellions at once. You'll need a tech lab for siege tanks or Thors. And the final production facility is going to be the starports, which allows you to do mechanical air. Reactors will allow you to make two Vikings at once or two medevacs at once, which will heal your units. And you'll need a tech lab if you want to make a Raven, Banshee, or battlecruiser. The final thing I want to discuss is the Terran Command Center. This is the building you start with. This is where you will build all your SCVs, but it does a little bit more than that. There are two paths you can go down. We'll take a look at both of them. You can either go down the Orbital Command path or the Planetary Fortress path. We'll take a look at the Orbital Command path first. Right, so we're going to talk about the Orbital Command first. It costs 150 minerals to make, and it requires a barracks. So once you click it, the command center will start changing, and while it's doing this, you cannot make any SCVs, so keep that in mind and make sure you time it correctly. The Orbital Command is definitely a lot more popular than the Planetary Fortress, and for good reason. It gives three pretty good abilities. One of them is not so good, and it shows that you're macroing poorly, but the other two are... sorry about that. The other two are actually really common, and actually they're discussed a lot in balance. Anyway, so once it's done, you're going to get an energy bar, which is what you spend to use the abilities. This recharges on its own. You don't need to collect anything. The first one is a mule. This will collect, I think it's 350 minerals, and it does it really fast. The next one is extra supply. You can call this down on one of your supply depots, and it will give you extra supply. Not really recommended. And the other one is a scanner sweep, which will reveal a part of the map for a couple seconds. You choose the part of the map, obviously. If you opted not to get an orbital command, instead you'll be getting a planetary fortress. It's 150 minerals and 150 gas. It also requires a engineering bay. Same thing applies while it's, building. You can't make any SCVs. The reason not a lot of people choose this is because it doesn't provide any of the benefits that the orbital command does. All it does is give you static defense, which means defense that can't move. So this pretty much adds a giant cannon to the top of your command center that will shoot anything that comes near it. And the damage isn't too bad against things that are light armored, which is just anything with no armor. So, I don't know. I'd advise against it. The second race we're going to take a look at is Zerg. This is the race I play, so it's probably the race you're going to be seeing the most, at least from my perspective. So this is the Zerg Gatherer, the drone. We've already seen the collecting of resources, so we're going to go ahead into building. Before I can go right into how drones build things, I need to cover a few things, because Zerg is a very unique race. The first thing you want to take notice to is this black stuff all on the floor here. This is called creep. Your units move quicker on it, and anything you build must be built on creep except for hatcheries. So, if you want to build something, you select your drone, you tell them what you want to build, it has to be on the creep. You see if I try to build it here, it says must place on creep. Now, here's the thing when you build something with a drone. It dies. You have to sack the drone, or sacrifice the drone, to build something. This is usually countered because a lot of the Zerg buildings are cheaper than other races because they do factor in you do have to, kill a drone, which is 50 minerals, and you're losing mining time. So that's something that you gotta keep in mind while playing Zerg. The next thing I wanted to talk about was how Zerg produce units, because this is also really unique. So every single Zerg unit is produced from the hatchery through these things called larvae. You can only have 3 at one time unless you use your queen here, which you need a spawning pool to build, to use her spawn larva ability on the hatchery. She'll vomit on it, and then these 4 eggs will appear. And once the great progression bar is full, you'll have 4 extra larvae. So pretty much you can use these larvae to make any units, but the thing is some of these units require certain buildings, like the roach requires the roach horn, the hydralis requires the hydralis den, etc. Another thing I want to cover about the queen is that her second ability is called spawn creep tumor, and what these will do is spread your creep, and that's definitely something you want to do because most of the Zerg units are really slow off creep, and also these creep tumors will give you vision throughout the map. The queen does have a third ability called transfusion. This will allow you to heal units. It's not often used because it requires a lot of energy. Alright, so the next thing I want to cover is the Zerg supply, which is also really unique. It's not a building, it's an actual unit. It's called an overlord. They're air units, they move very slowly, you can't get speed upgrades. What these guys are usually used, and what you do actually want to use them for, is seeing what your opponent's doing. They're great for getting vision. You can hide them like in little corners of your opponent's base and see what they're building, but most of the time, and it's not rare to do this either, you can just send them right in and sacrifice them to see what they're doing. They're not expensive to replace, and seeing what your opponent's doing is always really valuable, and you want to do it. Now the final thing I want to cover with Zerg is the hatchery progression. So obviously it starts out as a normal hatchery, and the first upgrade you can get is called a lair, so you're going to want to do that. Unlike the other ones, while this is happening, you can go ahead and continue to make drones. Now what lair does is it opens up progression to tier 2. Things like hydralisks and certain upgrades, actually most upgrades, require lair tech. And once you have a lair, you can then upgrade it to a hatchery. Obviously this costs more and it has certain requirements, and that will open up even higher tier units and more upgrades, and that's pretty much it. Now we're going to cover Protoss. I also play this race quite a bit, so chances are if I'm not playing Zerg, I'm going to be playing Protoss, so you'll also see this quite a bit from me. So this is the Protoss Gatherer. The probe, once again, we've already seen the collection of resources, so we're going to jump right into building. Alright, now the Protoss building is actually the most efficient in the game. Pretty much you're going to tell the probe whatever you want him to build, and it's going to finish on itself. So as soon as he puts it down, he can just head back to work and let it finish. And it will finish. I mean, there's really nothing else to it, but there is something unique about this. So the pylon, which also works as the Protoss supply, also powers all the buildings. So anything I want to build, like you'll see now that once this pylon finishes, you'll see this ring around it. This is the power field. So anything else that I want to build has to go in the pylon power field area. Like a gateway, which is a production facility and will make some attacking units. Now, you usually want more than one pylon near your buildings, because if all the pylons powering a building dies, the building will be unpowered and you can't use it at all. Okay, so the Protoss equivalent of a command center hatchery is called the Nexus. You don't build all your units here. All you build here are probes and a mothership, which is an air unit, which we'll get into a little bit later. But something unique about the Nexus is this chrono boost. pretty much you can use this on any building that is producing something, and it will increase it by 50% speed for 20 seconds. This is really useful. You want to be using it a lot. It will really speed things up, and it'll help you out a lot. Alright, so these are the Protoss production facilities. The first one is the gateway, which allows for really standard early units. Without a cybernetics core, which is this building right here, you can only make a zealot. Once you get your cybernetics core, you can make a sentry and a stalker. And these grayed out units, the High Templar and the Dark Templar requires a Dark Shrine, High Templar requires a Templar Archives. Those are just tech buildings, we'll talk about that later. So the gateway, normally, you'll select to make a unit, and the progress bar will, go like any other building, but you can make these a lot more efficient, which you'll do pretty much every game you play, and you can do that by researching this right here called Research Warp Gate. So while we wait for that to happen, I'm going to chrono boost it. We'll take a look at the other two tech buildings. First one is the robotics facility. This allows you to get 4 units, the first one being an observer, which is a cloaked unit, meaning they cannot see it without detection. This is just used for scouting. It can't attack or anything, it's just to see what's going on around the map or what's going on in your opponent's base. The warp prism, it's a little different. It can carry units. Another thing it can do is create a power field like a pylon, so while that's down, you can warp anything around the warp prism. The third unit is an immortal. These are really good. You'll also see these a lot when I'm playing Protoss. They counter any armored units. And the final unit is the Colossus, which you also need a robotics bay to warp in. These things are incredibly overpowered. The damage is just amazing, and so is the range. Everything about them is good, so you'll definitely see these a lot too. The final tech building, or production facility, is a Stargate. This allows you to get air. The first unit being a Phoenix, which counters other air. It can't shoot ground units. The second unit is a Void Ray. This can shoot ground and air. They're pretty good. They can charge up. The longer they're attacking something, the more damage they do. And the third one is a carrier, which you need a fleet beacon for. We talked about on the Nexus that there was a mothership. You also need a fleet beacon to get the mothership. The mothership is kind of rare. It's really expensive. It takes up a lot of supply, but it has a few unique abilities, and it can cloak all the units that are under it. So we're still waiting for this research to finish. So what Warp Gate is it's pretty much an upgrade for the gateway, and you'll never see somebody just skip this. It's gotten pretty much every Protoss game, I'd say, and you'll see why in a second. It pretty much allows you to make units anywhere on the map where you have a pylon. So you'll see now, just about to finish. Alright, now it's done, so I can select this gateway, turn it into a warp gate. And now that it is a warp gate, I can select any unit that I have the necessary tech to make, and I can put it in any power field on the map. This means that I can have a pylon, like over here, in my opponent's base, and I can warp stuff in over there via that pylon. So pretty much, the more of these, the better. If I had like 4 warp gates, I could warp in like 4 stalkers at once. You'll definitely see this a lot. Alright, so that concludes my tutorial. This was really basic. I actually didn't cover anything too much in depth because I don't really want to, pile this onto you. But there was some interest, and I just want to make sure that nobody's really left out. If you have absolutely any questions, go ahead and leave a comment or PM me. I don't want you being confused. Also, about the units, I'm probably going to go more in depth with them. I might make a unit guide for every single unit in the game, just because I think it's necessary for people who, are actually interested in this and want to learn more. So, I'm going to do this for a little while, to gauge interest. I don't know, hopefully you guys like it. So, once again, any questions, go ahead, leave a comment, PM me, and I'll see you guys soon.